This is the Blackout Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Blackout Podcast, where I get to talk to amazing people that do amazing things. And today I'm finally happy because I get to talk to Marc Tetrault, a friend, a producer. You've done so many things and a mentor. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here. I feel like we've been talking about this for a long time.
Yeah. Like at least 15 months. but then
at least 15. It's very accurate. Very accurate. Yeah.
But then you've made, I think, 3 features in that time. Like I know
in 15 months I would have made 3 feature films.
Yeah.
That's right.
Because there was the one, 2. Was it 2 in Newfoundland? Or?
No, I did. So I did. Probably when we started talking about this, I was doing a film called Spinster, which we did here.
Yeah.
With Andrea Dorfman in Nova Scotia, and then that fall, I did a show. So like not the fall we just had, but the fall before that, I did a feature in Newfoundland with this guy called Jason Levangie, called A Fire in the Cold Season, and then just the last spring did a feature here locally with Stephanie Clattenburg called Night Bloom. So. Yeah, it's been busy.
Yeah, so, I understand why you couldn't come. So, rewind a bit. How did it all start for you? Like, how did you get into film? Have you always wanted to do this?
Have I always wanted to do this? I feel like since I was a kid, I've always loved film. I'm not a film nerd at all. I didn't go to film school. Like, I don't know anything about... French New Wave or anything like that. Like, that's not my thing. But I definitely grew up loving film and TV, like raised by media. And I think I always I used to do these things where, which is funny because it's really what producing is. I used to do these things. I'd go on long car rides with my parents. We'd go to New York every year for the holidays, and I'd be in the car for 15 hours times 2. And I'd often just have a pad of paper, and I would write down a movie idea. Wouldn't write a movie, but write down a movie idea, maybe a title, maybe like where it's shot in the genre, and then I would write down the actors I'd want to be in this movie.
Oh, wow.
And that's all I would do, and I wouldn't do anything further than that. Which is funny now. I look back on that, and I'm like, that's kind of what I do now. I don't really do any heavy lifting. I just sit back and say, oh, it'd be cool to have that actor in this movie. It would be cool to make a movie about this, and then other people do it. Not so much, but like that's my goal at least. But I started doing that, and then in university, in high school, I started doing some short films just through a class called Film and Video with Daniel Ullman, local retired English teacher. And we would, myself and my girlfriend at the time, we were like pretty into it. Most people in the class didn't really take it seriously. It was a bird course, but we took it really, really, really seriously. And I was the editor, and right now I wouldn't push a button for anything in my life. But
do you remember any films you made during that period?
I really don't, actually.
Okay.
I really don't. They were pretty crappy. But I would edit, and I would stay there forever. And then I used to play football, and then I was the guy who had an editing software, and I would edit people's all-star reels. And so that they could go to university or whatever, I would just take all the footage of them and edit something together, put some music on it, and then they would show that to coaches. And then that's the end of me ever pushing a button ever again.
What were you editing with then?
Vegas Video.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
Sony Vegas, yeah.
Number 4, I think. I bought a system and everything. I had it in my house. It was budget. It was bad. But it seemed kind of professional at the time to me. It was better than iMovie, which is what we used in school. And so then I just kind of forgot about it, went to university, thought I was going to be a lawyer or something like that. I did a history degree. And then when I got out of college, I went traveling. I was working crappy jobs. And then all of a sudden, a good friend of mine, his dad, who works in television, just called me up and said, hey, there's a job at this TV show, making coffee, making copies, driving around. Interested, and I was doing a really shitty construction job at the time, and so I said, "Yeah, absolutely, I'm totally interested." So I did this production assistant job on a show called Canada's Super Speller. In 2008, the show was a spelling bee, like a national spelling bee. It went on for 8 months. It was a really long job, which is super rare. Here in Halifax. It was a Halifax film show. Previous to DHX. And so, previous to now what is Wild Brain. And so that show was my first job in the industry. I was a production assistant. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed all the people I worked with. I learned a lot. And I remember someone asking me, one of my bosses asking me, like, well, so like, and people ask this of PAs all the time, what are you interested? Do you want to be in camera? Do you want to be in sound? Do you want to be a director? Do you want to be a writer? And I was saying, no, I want to be a producer. They're like, yeah, okay, well, keep working in the office. That's a good spot to be. And so I kind of saw the people working above me who I wanted to be, and I'd ask them questions, and much like you do, and just be like really precocious and be like, hey, like, I want to know how you do this. Like, how do I do this? What? Give me advice, because I want to be you one day. Oh, sorry for hitting the mic. I want to be you someday. I just kept doing that, and I kept getting TV shows, and I remember I was trying to make a documentary. I wasn't really trying, but I thought I had a good idea for a documentary about mental health. Oh. And I was researching it, and because I didn't have a lot of things to do, I was researching it, and then I remember looking into how you get money to do that. And I went to, at the time, it was Film Nova Scotia. Oh. And they operated, or it might have been called something else before then. They were operating an equity fund for film. For film and TV. And so I looked at like the application and the guidelines and all the things you had to have done to qualify to get that money. All the boxes you had to tick. And I decided to set about and try and tick some of those boxes, because I realized pretty quickly, oh wait, I'm not ready for this. They're not going to give me money. That's not how this works. Like, I need to work at this for a while. And one of the boxes said, if no previous, TV shows produced or features produced, must have at least produced either a Nova Scotia Bridge Award, which was a short film award they used to give out through Film Nova Scotia, or an AFCOOP Film 5. Oh. And so at that point I was like, what's AFCOOP? I don't know what that is. I didn't know anything. And I Googled AFCOOP and realized that the Film 5s had already been selected. So it's too late, but that there was a production management workshop like that weekend. And so I went to that, paid like $45, whatever it was, went to that workshop, met a couple friends who had gotten in the program, Marc Purdy and Joel McKenzie, and we just hit it off. And they're like, well, what do you want to be our production manager? You could help out. And I had PA'd the other show, and then at that point I was on a new show called Mighty Jungle, which was a puppet show. So I was a production assistant still, and then I ended up production managing their short film and kind of learning what and I really dug into it. I wasn't just like there on the day, but like I spent months with these guys, like really doing everything, basically being the physical production person so that they could concentrate. They were co-writers. They wanted to concentrate on writing. And I had a really good experience. And the next year I applied for my own Film 5 with Jason Levangie, who's today my business partner. Yeah. And that was funny how that came about. I wrote Martha Cooley and just said, hey, I want to produce a Film 5. I don't know any directors or writers. Like, I've been writing some things, but I don't know directors, and I'm not going to be the director. And she said, you should meet Jason Levangie. I think you guys would get along. We had a coffee, and we did get along. And from there, he had an idea for a short film, and we co-wrote it together. And then he directed it. I produced it, and it was, I don't think either of us would ever show it to anybody. It's not very good, but we learned a lot, and we also began to grow together. As he had been doing this for a long time before that too. Like, he had been working he's like a few years older than me, and he always wanted to be in film. And he's the kind of guy who went to film school and is a film nerd and does know about French New Wave and all that stuff. And so he had been working for a while. And so I learned a lot from him too. And we decided after a bit, I was still working in the industry. As I think I moved up from being a PA to I went from being a PA, I did a CMPA mentorship. Oh, yeah. With Tom Fitzgerald's company. And I was there for a year. Actually, I was there for 2 years. I was there for a year, and then we were going to make a film called Cloudburst.
How long does the CMPA thing last?
It's only like 6 months.
Oh, so they just kept you on after?
Yeah, what happened was I did the mentorship, and then we were supposed to go to camera on his movie Cloudburst, and then they were going to start paying me on that as a production assistant or something. But that movie fell apart the first time he tried to make it, which was a really interesting experience for me as a now producer to watch that all happen, because it was, soul crushing for them and very difficult. But it fell apart, and then he kind of kept me on, and someone else, the lady who I'd my kind of first production mentor, this lady Faye Sullivan, she was the coordinator on Canada's Super Speller, and she had sort of told me I should go do a mentorship with Tom, so she was working there too. And so the two of us stayed on for an entire year and kind of helped them get that movie back up. Also helped them produce a play. I mean, help them produce. I didn't produce anything. I just ran around and got stuff. But he produced a play version of a theatrical version of the film. And I was still there working. And then that next summer, we made the movie. And that was my first time on a movie. And I was the assistant production coordinator. So I was in the office. And first movie, and it was a good movie to learn on because it was a decent size. And it was interesting. There was like, some stars in it, people coming, 2 Oscar-winning actresses who came to be in it, and so that was kind of fun to watch, like them get cast and then have them come to Halifax and work. So I was Olympia Dukakis and Brenda Fricker, and then from there I got a job as a locations manager.
What?
Right away, like because of the film 5 I did.
Yeah.
When you produce a film 5, as you know, you end up being the location manager yourself, right? You don't get to hire people like that. So I was doing that on my film 5, and I had gotten the location from a seasoned location manager who gave me the location as a friend, Sean Clark.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think he and the producer mentor watched me deal with like a very difficult situation on the shoot. And I won't say any names, but it was just like the location owner just kind of went a bit nuts on us in the middle of the shoot, and I had to deal with it, and it was hard to deal with, but I dealt with it well. And so Sean Doyle, who was our producer mentor at the time, is a good pal of mine. He saw me deal with that and said, "Hey, I think this guy can do that job actually." And so he was production managing a movie called Roller Town with Picnic Face that my now business partners and friends, Jay Dahl and Bill Niven, were producing, but I didn't know them at the time at all. And they asked me to be the location manager, and I came in and I said, I don't really know what this job is. Let's talk about it a bit. And they told me a bit about it, and I said, I think I can do that, but I need this much money. And they said, oh, we're not paying that much. I said, well, listen, like I don't want to do this job unless it's that much money, because I know from talking to people this is a hard job. And they were like, okay, all right, fine, you can have that much money. And it wasn't that much money, but at the time it was a lot for me. And so I started location managing that show. Got to know Jay Dahl and Bill Niven really well, who are, like I said, now business partners and really good friends. And did that show. It was a lot of fun. Just shoveled a lot of garbage. And I was all of a sudden, I was a location manager. And then that turned into, I went to New York, and I thought it was going to transition my career to the U.S. because I'm a dual citizen. Okay. And I was like, I'm gonna go to New York and do what I'm doing here down there, and I'm gonna work forever and be a big success. I was also applying to film school in New York. That didn't work out, but I went down there. I applied to film school. I was living there for like 5 or 6 months, and I had, I think, 1-2 days on set the entire time I was down there. Oh wow! So I was there for like 6 months. I didn't work essentially. Produced a short film down there with some people, and it was a fucking crazy short film that was really stupid. That some guy self-financed. A really weird situation, but it was kind of fun. Yeah. And then halfway through that, Jay Dahl wrote me and said, we're doing a TV show with Picnic Face, and we think you should come back and be the locations manager on it. And I said, how much money? And they told me. I was like, yeah, okay, sure. And I came back because I had not worked in forever. And I was just spending every dollar I'd ever made in my life on nothing in New York and just kind of being an idiot. And so I came back. And at that point, also, Jason Levangie and I were talking a lot. We decided we wanted to start a production company. So this was 2011. So I came back to location manage the Picnic Face TV show and start a company, which became my company now, which is called Shut Up and Color Pictures with Jason. So we started it. We ended up, I think we inked it that fall. I came back in spring, and in that fall we had a company. And the plan was to make music videos. So he had been directing and producing music videos for a number of years, and then sort of pitched me on a business case for how one could actually maybe make money off them. I'll tell you now, you can't make money off music videos. But we tried. We used to actually get tax credits from the old tax credit system because they had no minimum caps. So you could do a music video for $5,000,
Yeah.
spend $5,000 on labor, and afterwards you could go apply and get that money back as a tax incentive. And so it would be revenue to the company. And so for us, we were working for free. We weren't charging artists or labels money to produce their videos because we would get this money later. And I think to this date, I don't know if we've ever gotten any of that money. It was like not a great business model, but we turned that into producing. The whole goal for doing that was we wanted to be making feature films and television. It wasn't we wanted to make music videos. It was we can make music videos. We need a company to do so. Let's start one, and then let's start developing content, right? And so I think we started writing, ideas for movies at least. I don't know if we actually wrote any scripts, but we wrote ideas for movies, and we started collecting other people's ideas for movies and trying to develop them. All the while, both of us were still working in the industry too. So like he was, he was working as a location manager sometimes, but also as a director of photography. And I was working as a location manager, and then I started getting hired as a production manager for the first time on these dramatic recreation shows for like Nat Geo and Smithsonian Channel. So I did a few seasons of this show called Forensics Firsts, which I think ended up becoming called Catching Killers or something like that. But we would just do recreations, so no sound, very low key. Actors were not actors, like just people we'd find who would come out for $100, and we'd have a cool, like, fun little crew of professionals. But we just have a lot of fun with it. And Jay Dahl is the director, and he's a lot of fun to work with. And so we just did some crazy shit. And I don't know how many times I played, like, murderer or, like, sexual abuser or whatever in these old things. Like, just your hands, man, just your hands. And then, like, that's like you're shooting my face. Like, get my face out of there. But I did a lot of that, and kind of like at that point, I was like learning how to like manage humans, manage budgets, manage schedules, hire people, all that sort of stuff. And so that was a really good experience for me. And Jason and I, at that time also, I think roughly, I remember this very well. We, to make our first feature film, we made a feature film called Saudade. It's a Spanish language feature film that we made with Ecuador.
Oh, okay.
So it was fully in Spanish language, Ecuadorian writer-director. Ecuador and Argentina partnered, like two companies partnered together as a co-production, official co-production to make the movie. And then we were the Canadian side. And what happened was we just met this filmmaker through a friend of mine. I think he had been like, what do you call it? Like an exchange student or something like that and he stayed at my friend's house in Montana in the United States. And my friend was like, "You should meet my filmmaker friend, Juan. He's awesome. He's in Ecuador." And I was like, "Sure, I'll meet your Ecuadorian film friend." Like, I don't know where that's gonna go.
Yeah.
But then one day we did meet, like just via Skype or whatever. And he said, "I'm making a movie," and we were like, "Oh, that's pretty cool. What's it about?" And he told us what it was about, and we really liked what it was about. It was a movie set in the '90s, kind of like about a suburban kid dealing with like a full on coming of age story, but suburban skater kid in the '90s dealing with what he said were like economic dislocation. So in that time, Ecuador was struggling financially and then took on the US dollar. And so according to, I think, a lot of Ecuadorians, they see that as like the loss of their identity, the loss of currency being the loss of their identity. And a lot of people started moving to Argentina or Colombia or Peru just to get out of there because it was riots and it was a big deal. And that's how it happened during his childhood. And he set this like coming of age story amidst this, and it really appealed to me and Jason. But of course it was in Spanish. And so we're like, is it good? I don't know. Is it good? He would send us like, Juan would send us like music videos he made. We're like, oh, this guy's talented. He's cool. He makes cool shit. But like, what's the script about? So we paid $400 to have someone translate it.
Oh, man.
Got it translated. And then we're like, yeah, this is cool. We like this. How can we help produce this movie? Because he had reached out to us because he was like, he has what we call in the business like a gap in his financing. He had some financing, but he didn't have enough for what he needed to do.
Yeah.
So he thought we could somehow come up with money, which we were like, maybe we can. We don't really know how this works. So we actually went to talk to Telefilm, and they were like, get out of here. They come back to us in 10 years. And so we said, okay, how can we do this? And so what we realized is that we had been working on music videos and commercials and these like recre shows and whatever for so long that we had great relationships with vendors. Like, who it was Sim Video, who's a camera supplier, who's RIP. They're in Toronto now, only not here. And the Postman, which is now kind of Connections, so Marc Savoie. We worked with those guys all the time, and we became good friends with them, and we were just clients who were friends, and so we thought maybe we can leverage those relationships into bringing something to their movie that they can't afford.
Yeah.
So they were going to shoot this on like a DSLR maybe, or on like a Sony F5 or something. Like there wasn't going to be like a high quality film, like a cinema camera. And so we said, well, what if we got like Master Primes and like a red camera for you?
Wow.
And they were like, oh my God, that'd be incredible.
Yeah.
And so we went and got a really good deal with Sim. Thank you, Sim. At Sim Digital Tattersall. I don't know what they're called now. But thank you, Jeff Wheaton, I should say. And then we got a really good deal on that. It was not very busy here. We brought that down and they were like, oh my God, thank God. And then we also brought video post back to Nova Scotia, to the Postman, which is not something else they were struggling with. How did they could afford to do the kind of just not just the color correct, but like the effects that Wankar wanted to do in his film. And so we didn't really bring any money. We brought resources that they couldn't afford, and we brought them down there. And for that, we became producers of this movie, because it was essentially like bringing, $70,000 to the table, but it didn't cost us that. It cost us something. It cost us like 15 or 20,000 that we had made from making music videos and whatever the hell that we just kind of invested into this guy's movie just because we wanted to make a movie and also wanted to go to Ecuador for 2 months. And so we went down to Ecuador with this camera package, and it was really intense, and there was a lot of problems getting there and issues we don't have to get into, but it was that was our first feature film, and we had a lot of fun making it. And sadly, it didn't do as well as one would have hoped. It's a really good film, but it was also in Spanish and just not something that people want to buy, which we found out. But it did sell. It ended up on Starz in the United States, and it was an HBO Latino, and so it made some like small sales around the world. Played some film festivals. Like we played in Santa Barbara, we played in Germany, we played in France and Spain, and it was a really good experience. And that was our first feature film, and I think from there it was like we had a thirst to make more, and we kept trying to figure that out. We went to we got some money from Telefilm to write a script. And so we went to Los Angeles for a few months to like write this script, and we wrote it. And it's like 160 pages long, and no one's ever read it. But I think it's actually, in my heart of hearts, I think it's probably cool. I don't know.
Like 160 pages.
It's super long, man. It needs to be edited. Yeah. It needs to be edited. But we went down there, we wrote this film, and then have done nothing with it. But that was a good experience, just like writing that film, something very different than what I had been doing. And from there, I went to the Canadian Film Centre, which is a great program in Toronto. Producers lab that they call it. They have a director's lab and a writer's lab, and a TV writer's lab, and an editor's lab, and an actor's lab, and all these things. And they select 5 people every year, and you go stay there for 6 months, and you basically it's like a residency program in a way, right? Like you're there. There's no classes, but you're there. You bring a project in development, and you keep working on it. And you meet people, and they bring people in for you to interview and talk to. I think you would love it. Like you get what you put into it. You know what I mean? It's like if you ask questions and you are out there and talking to people, you get a lot out of it. If you just kind of sit there, nothing will happen to you. It was a great experience for me, and I learned a lot, like a ton. Like I didn't know anything about financing movies before that. I didn't know anything about casting, really. I didn't know anything about anything. So I feel like going to Film Center like completely changed my perspective from, I'm still pretty scrappy, but like from being super scrappy to like being a bit more thoughtful and professional, and like knowing a little bit how to get things done. And out of that program, we these young ladies who were in the acting program, or one of them was in the acting program, sent me a script, and it was great. Like I really liked it. As a friend of theirs in L.A. had written it. It was called Suck It Up.
Oh, yeah.
And they sent me this script, and they wanted to take me out. And I had read that, or I think I went to a conference where Brian Grazer from Imagine, like Brian Grazer is Ron Howard's partner. Brian Grazer talked about how, I don't know what the story was. I think it was that he went to a spa for one of his first meetings. Like maybe it was about the film Big or something like that. But he had like met the writer and they had gone to a spa together, and it was like the best first meeting ever. So I took these two young women to a nail salon to talk about the project after I had read it. We had this great first date essentially in a nail salon in Toronto, talking about this movie and how they wanted to make it and how I could help. And from then they were like, oh, yeah, and we were all like, let's make this together. And they had done a ton of work. They had gotten a script written. They had signed on Jordan Canning to be the director, who was someone I was friends with, admired a lot, and thought would be an excellent director. And so Jason and I read the script, and we were both like, we're on board. How can we help? And so we set about trying to raise money for this film. We all decided we were going to make it for a very small amount of money, but we had to go make it in the Rockies. It was set in the Rockies in Western Canada, and that was not going to change. So everyone kept saying, we'll just shoot it in Nova Scotia, and or just shoot it in Northern Ontario. We're like, no, it's going to be in the Rockies. They're like, well, I don't know how you're going to finance that.
Yeah.
And we had an American writer, which means that you can't have telefilm. The telefilm won't invest in a non-Canadian screenplay unless there's a co-production, but there's no co-productions with the United States. And so
No, there isn't?
No. So co-productions, you can work with the United States, but those are always called, well, it's all terminology, but telefilm would refer to that as a co-venture, as would CRA and Cavco. Whereas in the United States, anytime a producer and a producer work together, it's called a co-production. In Canada and the rest of the world, co-productions are these official treaties between countries. So like Canada and Ireland will work together to come up with a treaty of how you can get government financing from each country and marry them together. The reason the U.S. doesn't do that is because there's no government financing for film, because they're the only place in the world that doesn't have to do that because they've got a studio system. I mean,
Yeah.
UK to a certain extent also, but they also have government financing. And so we didn't know how to raise money for this. And so we just kept trying. And so we had a couple false starts, but we ended up getting a broadcast license because they really responded to the script and to Jordan. And we ended up getting, turning that into this award called Women in the Director's Chair. Through Creative Women's Workshop and Carol Whiteman. And so the deal with that was that it was almost, at that point, it was only in British Columbia. But I had heard of it, and through the CFC, like these are things you learn at the CFC, how to get money. And so we applied to it, and we made the case that they do their first national project, and they did. And so we expanded that mostly to Toronto. So we started getting other companies on board to help out. And so in the end, that still wasn't enough to make a movie, but we, after a lot of work and trying and luck, we were able to get some private financing together, and we made this film for a very small amount of money in the Rockies in like 2016.
How many days did you shoot for?
I think officially 18. But what we did, since none of us were from that area, we were all staying in like Airbnbs and cabins. What we pitched to our DOP, Guy Godfrey, and to our director and to everybody else was that we were going to do weekend shooting, but with no crew. Like very minimal. We're in the Rockies. It's gorgeous. Like, let's take the car out and go drive around and shoot some stuff. Yeah. Let's go for a hike and up to the top of a mountain and shoot some stuff. And I guess the hard part there was that we had to have the sound guy with us. Yeah. You're very important. And so the sound guy was from Calgary. And so that's like the one crew member we had to have. We'd be like, hey, Ron, please, like, you stay this weekend, don't go home to your family, we'll pay you, but like we want you to come hang out with us and shoot this stuff. Yeah. And so we did. So it was 18 days. I would say like really probably normal schedule would have been more like 20. Yeah. But also like we had all the time in the world. Our DOP Guy Godfrey, our first AD was my friend Keith White from Halifax. We flew out for the movie just because we couldn't find anybody in Alberta, and he really wanted to do it, and it was he basically essentially volunteered. And he came out, And because he and the DOP and Jordan were all quite experienced, we never rushed. It was felt like a 30-day schedule, which is why I think the movie did so well and was good and was well received, because we had time. Also, we had time to develop it, because we had all these false starts where we thought we were going to make it and then we couldn't get the financing together. All of that made the film better because Jordan and Julia Hoff, the writer, spent like a year and a half working on the script together intensely, thinking that any day it might get shot. And they completely changed the film from when I first read it to what we shot. It went from kind of very broad comedy, it was a great version of that, to a really it's a drama with some levity and some funny parts, but it's a very serious drama about grief. And so I'm happy that it took that long to make that film. I think all films, need that development process, and I think Jason and I are fiercely proud of that movie and really happy that we made that. And that kind of, I feel like really that, in a way, was like a turning point or transition in my career, where I wasn't just a production manager and I wasn't just some scrappy guy who made some movie in South America. We made a film that we had to go get real money for and work with a bank on and all that stuff, and it was a really big turning point. And it went to festivals and people wanted to buy it, and it was great. And so since then we've been hustling so hard trying to develop more scripts and make more films. And it's funny because from 2016 until 2018 we weren't making anything. But then 2018, all of a sudden, it was all those things I just told you about, and it was extremely busy, and made a bunch of films. And 2019, we made a film in 2019 as well. 2020 feels like it's going to be. 2020's only been a month long, and I feel like I haven't slept yet. I've been so busy in 2020, sort of figuring out what 2020 is going to look like.
Yeah.
So, I kind of owe that all to the culmination of my career, I think, at Suck It Up, and then now I am a film producer, I guess. I don't know. It's a really long-winded answer to how I got started in this.
But so I guess now, you've kind of talked about, you look at projects, but you must get a little projects. How do you decide this is the one?
Mm-hmm. I guess it's a lot of projects for sure. I feel that I'm at a stage in my career where I am not powerful enough to just make anything I want, if that's the best way to put it. And so it has to be a good script. I have to like it. That's important. But B, I think there has to be momentum. I can't just get a script, like it, and then be like, cool, I'll pour the next 6 years of my life into this thing and make it. Because there's so many other films that get sent where they're like, we have this actor attached, or we've got this director attached, there's this little piece of financing already in it. We need you to sort of put it all together and take it to the finish line. And those are projects I like to hop on because I get to then start doing the thing that I do, but also become the producer and start, weighing in. So Spinster's a really good example of that. Spinster, actually, two of the movies I made in the past 3 years are really good examples of that. So Spinster, Andrea Dorfman had been developing for years with her writer, Jennifer Dale, and with Bill Niven and with Jay Dahl. And so what happened was they sent it to me some point to read it, just to, I don't know, see what I thought about it maybe or something. I can't remember why. And I really liked it a lot. And they were really enthused by how much I liked it. And I said, well, listen, if you really like this film, why don't you take the lead and really try and put this together? And I said, great, I'm super happy to do that. So that was a lot of momentum in place already. There was a writer and director who were experienced and I thought made cool stuff. There was these two producers who were on board who were going to help me, guide me through this process. That was my first time working with Telefilm. And so they really guided me through that process. So for me, it was kind of a no-brainer. It was I just come in and I add my value, and you guys are going to all support me, and there's all this momentum happening already. And then similarly with the one I made in Newfoundland, A Fire in the Cold Season, Justin Aucoin had already produced a movie and directed one on his own. And this one he had written, and he had gotten serious interest from Telefilm, but they told him he needed to work with somebody like me, somebody who was fiscally responsible and a producer. They wouldn't give him the money unless he had someone like me. So he approached me and was like, hey, here's a script. And I was like, okay, I like this script. And then it was B, well, I'm going to, like, there's money I'm going to put, like, there's all this money I've already raised for it. I just need you to kind of put it all together and run point. And I said, well, that's easy. And that's not easy. It's super hard, but I'm like, okay, great. There's a lot of momentum.
Yeah.
I don't have to put my entire life into this for 4 years. I can put my entire life into it for 4 months and then sort of do all these other things. And so that was important to us. And, or to me, it's like, it's important to pick that script. It's got to be good, but I feel like at this point in my career, it has to have some sort of momentum. Just reading a script that someone's like, I don't know, but it's a script. And I'm like, cool. Well, like, I've got a lot of scripts, and I want to be at a point in my career at some point where I can be like, read a script and say, make that. And then people go and make it, but I'm not there. It requires me, any project requires me killing myself for 3 years to make it. And so if that can be lessened, and that burden can be lessened in some way, it's attractive to me. But of course it has to be a good script. So that's really important.
So now you've picked up the script. What happens from then till when the film is made?
So much, man. Like, development, of course, like creative development. So here's a good example. Like, I'll use Night Blooms as an example. Stephanie Clattenburg and I had worked together, myself as a line producer, she as a director on a film called Hopeless Romantic. And we were kind of always been friends for a while. And I thought she did a really good job as a director on that film. So I was interested in working with her, which is important. And then she pitched me 2 ideas. There's no script. And I said, not that idea, but that idea. I like that idea. Write it and let's talk. And then she wrote it in like a month. And we talked about it. And that was Night Blooms. And from there, I said, okay, yeah, you know what? I want to do this. Let's get some paperwork done or whatever. And so me and Jason said, we really want to do this. And we worked for a long time on that script with Stephanie, with outside script editors. So that was the creative development process. There was a lot of work on that script. Because the pitch she gave me to what we actually ended up shooting, that's all very different. But with the general theme in mind. And from there, like, having a good script is fine, but you have to get financing. And that's what I do, what we do as producers. And so we pitched Telefilm. Telefilm really liked the idea, really liked Stephanie, really liked Jason and I, wanted to support all of us. And so they came on board. And then we were like, what are we going to do next? We need to, in my mind, it was like, we need to package this film. So packaging a film means like bringing cast to it. And so we worked with Stephanie a lot on casting. We sent a casting call across the country looking for our star. We finally found a young lady that we thought was great, named Jessica Clement, who lived in Toronto. I think she now lives here. And then we also, through Stephanie, connected with this actor, Nick Stahl, who had been in a lot of movies that I watched as a kid, In the Bedroom and like Bully and things like that. And she knew him personally. And she said, do you think Nick would be good in this movie? And Jason and I were both just like, yeah, Nick would be fucking awesome in this movie. Are you kidding me? So we reached out to Nick and he read the script and he was like, oh yeah, like, I love this character. And so he got in, so we were packaging this film. And that movie happened really quick. It went from, realistically, I would say, how'd that work? I feel like she pitched me in like a November. By January, she had a script. No, it couldn't have been this quick. Okay. We went to Telefilm, I think, in an April of some year, 2017 maybe, 2018. What's the year? It's 2020 right now? Yeah. So 2018. We went to Telefilm in the spring with that script that I had read in January, so very quickly. They liked it. They financed us. And then the following spring, we made the movie. And so we spent a lot of time from that point on kind of like coming up with the plan of how we were going to shoot this film. Stephanie was very particular about how she shot the film. And so we did a lot of planning. I think that's your answer your question. What happens between script and making the film? A, you have to finance it, of course, and B, you have to work on the creative. But C, you have to plan. We planned forever. It was a set in the 90s. We had very little money.
Oh, man.
And we wanted to shoot it without any film lights. That was super important to Stephanie. So I think a film light came out like twice in the movie. Otherwise, it was just like a lamp or whatever it was.
Wow.
And so that took a lot of planning. Our TOP is this great guy, Paul McCurdy, who is like a bit of a genius. And he just would sit there and he would be like, I can only shoot in this room from 1 p.m. until 3 p.m. And our AD would pull her hair out and say, what? What are you talking about? It's like only 2 hours in that room every day. And we would had to plan the film out to do that way. And so if you don't have money, you have to have time. And we had time. So and I think every film's different, but that's, I think, what happens from almost every film from this, when you decide you're going to make it to when you make it, is like, you've got to work the creative, raise the financing, and plan the shit out of it.
And how many days did you have on Night Blooms?
We shot for 20 or 21 days. Okay. 20 days on that film. Then we already shot 1 day of pickups. And then we're talking about potentially shooting a few more pickups. Okay. So in the end, it could be like 23 days, but the pickup days are pretty chill. It's like we shoot for a couple hours, and so it's not like a full day of production, but it was 20 days of like real production. On
With the lead, they'll have to come into the city, or
if we do any pickups, the first pickups we did were with no actors. Had some background in it, but it was mostly just like, we shot the film in spring and we wanted to be shooting in summer, but we couldn't because of how busy it was. And so the film was pretty dreary, and we wanted to add some summer moments to it. So in the summer, we sent out a team to go shoot some summer stuff to put together. Shots of trees being green, and kids playing shirtless or whatever, you know. And the new pickups we would shoot would involve actors. Oh, okay. So we would have to fly our 2 stars in. Okay. And like, we'd be shooting like a real scene. And
so you said the year started and you've been working on stuff. What are some of the things on your slate now?
Yeah, so I'm working with this local filmmaker called Jason Buxton, who did Blackbird on his next film called Sharp Corner. So we're working with people in Toronto as partners, and the people in Toronto brought us on as partners locally, and so we're less so developing that and we're also less so financing that, and what we're doing is coming up with a plan. So the guy in Toronto's financing and developing with Jason. We weigh in a little bit, but really it's Jason's baby. And then we, Jason Levangie and I, are coming up with a plan for how to do this movie. It's a very involved movie. It's going to have a very large budget and like require a lot of planning. So that's one film. We're working with an LA producer on what we call service production. So service production is literally where you only do the planning part. And even then, maybe you do a little bit less of that. They come in, you make their movie for them, you get a paycheck, and they leave. So that's a film. We're working on a film like that. We're also writing again. So we're going away in February for a week to do some writing on not the 160-page script, but the next 160-page script.
A different
one.
Okay.
Completely. It's actually the project that I took to CFC to develop, and we haven't really touched it since. Yeah. So we're really excited to sit down and do some writing, because though we're producing, we've always had these aspirations to write our own stuff, and so trying to find time for that. And what else? We're there's a couple TV shows on our slate for sure that we're trying to work on, and there's a couple feature films. Again, that like I would say. There's a couple other feature films that we're not the tip of the spear on. So people are building that momentum so that then we can come in and do our thing. And then also we're both like, producing doesn't always pay the bills. And so I also work as like a line producer and production manager, and so I'm doing some 2020 scheming there too, and trying to, there's TV shows being shot here and stuff like that, and I get to work on them, so I'm doing a lot of that. That keeps the lights on.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna end it with this one though. So someone watches this and is like, I want to do what you are doing at some point, sure. Right? What are 3 things they need to focus
on? Number 1, I would say it's and maybe I won't order these. One of the things I think is building a network of people that are in this industry. They don't have to just be local. They could be anywhere, but I think I've worked really hard on building a network both here and in Toronto and that turns into opportunities. And without that network, there'd be no opportunities. So I think networking is extremely important. Going to events, meeting people, going outside your bubble, getting to film festivals, talking to people, going to things like the Canadian Film Center, doing things like the AFCU programs, whatever it is, networking is super important. Another thing I think that's super important is I think it's important to work in the industry. I think that, I always see it as like I've got a career and I've got a job, and my job is production management, line producing, and my career is producing. But my job could easily be a insurance salesman or firefighter, right? And if it were, I feel like those career opportunities would be much more difficult to obtain. So I'm really thankful and lucky that it's turned out in a way that I get to work in the industry, and I'm constantly always thinking about it, whether I'm working for somebody or working for myself. And everything I do, I'm learning something that can help me in my career. So whether I go spend the whole summer production managing some TV show, without a doubt, I'm going to learn a ton that I can bring to my career as a producer, and maybe transition myself into TV, for example. So I don't really know how to do that yet. And I think working in the industry is what's helping me along the way, the whole way. And then number 3, I think it's, whatever. I could say hard work, and sure. But I don't know if that's it. I feel like maybe like working smart, like not always. I think there's a lot of things people do that can be like self-sabotaging, and a lot of people don't make things because they want it to be perfect, and then they end up just never making it, and then no one is ever going to pay attention to them or hear them or see them. And so I think working smart and getting your stuff out there, and I think working smart plays into working hard. You've got to work hard, but you can't just work hard. Like working dumb to me would just be like living in your attic, writing your script for 10 years and no one ever sees it. You're working hard, but you're not working smart.
Yeah.
So I think working smart is like doing that and making sure that you also get it out there for people to read. And then for me, it's like, I could wait until that budget's perfect, or just get it out so someone can evaluate it. Or I could spend a long time writing that proposal or that email, or waiting to like pitch somebody until I had more information. But if I had the opportunity to pitch them, I should just pitch them. So it's just things like that. I think it's about like not setting up hurdles or barriers for yourself to jump over, but just constantly running, as opposed to, starting and stopping a bunch.
Wow. Thank you so much, Marc.
No problem.
I know you have a super busy. Maybe after the summer, I'll have you come back to talk about the other film you're working, Blackbird.
Sure. Blackbird was the one that got made. It's Sharp Corner.
Sharp Corner. Yeah, he made Blackbird. Yeah. Sure, we'll talk about Sharp Corner.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Cool, man. Thank you.
This is the Blackout Podcast.
Thanks for listening.